The laugh echoed too loudly for a bank lobby. It was sharp, careless, the kind of laugh that assumed the world was arranged exactly as it appeared. "Sir," the billionaire said, barely looking up from his phone, "this line is for account holders, not questions." The janitor in front of him didn't flinch. He just tightened his grip on the cracked smartphone in his hand and said quietly, "I just want to check my balance." The billionaire's name was Evan Harrington. He was a man used to being obeyed, whose name was carved into glass towers and whispered in boardrooms. He'd built an empire from algorithms and acquisitions, and on that particular morning, he was in the bank to finalize a 7-figure transfer before jetting off to Zurich, but the lobby had stalled. The system was slow, and his patience, already thin, was wearing out. When he glanced up and saw the man holding up the line, the laugh slipped out before he could stop it. The man wore a faded work jacket, scuffed boots, and a name badge that read maintenance. To Evan, it was just another obstacle in an inefficient world. The janitor's name was Marcus Reed. He had come straight from a night shift, the faint smell of disinfectant still clinging to his clothes. He was a single father, a fact that nothing about his quiet posture advertised. Years ago, after his wife passed away, he learned how to make himself smaller, quieter, easier to overlook. He raised his 8-year-old daughter, Lily, on a foundation of overtime hours and hand-me-down hope. He didn't ask for much. Today, all he wanted was to see some numbers on a screen. The teller motioned Marcus forward, her eyes flicking apologetically toward Evan. "You can use the balance checker right here," she said gently, trying to move things along. Evan smirked, already composing a text in his head about the bank's poor service. "Go ahead," he said, waving Marcus on with a theatrical flourish. "Let's see how inspiring this is." Marcus unlocked his phone with a thumb that bore the deep cracks of hard work. The banking app took a moment to load. In that brief pause, Evan's mind filled the silence with assumptions. Overdraft fees, a few $100s at best, maybe a government deposit waiting to be spent. He leaned back, thoroughly amused by the spectacle. Then the screen refreshed, and the smile slid right off Evan's face. The balance wasn't just high, it was astronomical, the kind of number that made your eyes search for commas, then count them not once but twice. Evan leaned forward, completely forgetting himself, his breath catching in his throat. The teller's eyes widened. The entire lobby seemed to inhale as one silent gasp. That can't be right," Evan stammered, the words tumbling out before he could remember who he was supposed to be. Marcus frowned, looking embarrassed by the sudden attention. "Is something wrong?" he asked softly. "I don't really understand all of it. Just needed to make sure the transfer went through for my daughter's school." Evan just stared, his mind racing. "What do you do?" he asked, his voice suddenly stripped of its arrogance, now careful and quiet. "I clean," Marcus replied simply. "Hospitals mostly. Offices at night, whatever keeps the lights on." Evan let out another laugh, but this time it was different. It was brittle, cracked. "Oh," he said, shaking his head. "I mean, what did you do before?" Marcus hesitated. "I used to write code," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "A long time ago." Evan's world tilted on its axis. "What kind of code?" he pressed. "Distributed systems," Marcus said. "Data security, trustless verification." Before it was a popular thing, the pieces slammed together in Evan's mind like a vault door clicking shut. He remembered a project from years and years ago, a ghost developer, an anonymous genius whose framework had quietly become the foundation for half the technologies Evan later acquired. A contributor who vanished long before the big buyouts, leaving behind an open-source backbone that was now worth billions. "That was you," Evan whispered, more to himself than to Marcus. It wasn't a question, it was a revelation. Marcus just shrugged, clearly uncomfortable with the spotlight. "I didn't want the fame. My wife got sick." Priorities change. A wave of heat rose in Evan's chest. Not anger, but a profound, burning shame. All this time, he had operated under the assumption that wealth looked a certain way, spoke a certain language, wore a certain suit. He had laughed at a man who scrubbed floors at night and packed his daughter's lunch in the morning, never once imagining that brilliance could be wrapped in such quiet humility. "Why?" Evan asked, the question hanging in the air. Marcus's jaw tightened, a flicker of pride in his eyes. Because my daughter needs stability, he said, his voice firm. And because money doesn't raise a child, presence does. Those words landed harder than any insult Evan had ever received. He thought of his own penthouse, a vast, empty space filled with art he didn't understand. He thought of the missed birthdays, the assistants who stood in for affection, a life where success was measured in headlines instead of heartbeats. The janitor no, the father, the genius wasn't here checking his balance out of greed. He was here to give it away. Just then, the bank manager appeared, flustered and apologetic, offering private rooms and personal service. Marcus politely declined. "I'm fine," he said. "I just needed the confirmation." As Marcus turned to leave, Evan found himself standing up, his body moving before his brain caught up. "Wait," he called out. "I owe you an apology." Marcus turned back, a look of genuine surprise on his face. "For what?" "For laughing," Evan said, his voice raw. "For assuming. For forgetting that value doesn't always announce itself." Marcus studied him for a long moment, his gaze seeing past the expensive suit and the sharp haircut. Then he simply nodded. "We all do it," he said. "What matters is what you do after." Evan extended his hand. For the first time in years, it trembled. "Jew, would you consider meeting?" "Not for business, just to talk." A small, tired, but genuine smile touched Marcus's lips. "Maybe," he said, "maybe, if you don't mind picking a place where my daughter can come to." That afternoon, Evan canceled his flight to Zurich. Weeks later, an anonymous donation fully funded the school program for grieving children. Evan started showing up, truly showing up to conversations, to commitments to his own life. And Marcus kept cleaning, but only the spaces that mattered most to him. He spent the rest of his time teaching his daughter, Lily, how to code, how to give back, and how to stand quietly but firmly in her own worth, knowing she didn't need anyone's approval. The world would never stop underestimating people like Marcus Reed. But on that day, one billionaire learned a truth he would never forget. Sometimes the richest person in the room is the one who doesn't need to prove it. And sometimes the smallest request, whispered with humility, is powerful enough to shatter the loudest, most arrogant assumptions. Thanks for watching. If this story moved you, don't forget to like and subscribe for more content that makes you think. See you next time.